Around 70 kilometres from the German mainland lies the small island of Heligoland with its imposing red sandstone cliffs. Around 1,250 people live on the 4 square kilometre island, which belongs to the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein. Known today as a tourist resort and duty-free paradise, the island has had an exceptionally turbulent history. It has been claimed by various nations, has been a military base, and was even the scene of one of the most massive demolition attempts in history. But why? Why would such an inconspicuous patch of land become so problematic for the British that they simply wanted to blow it up? And what did Germany have to give up to get this small island? We answer all these fascinating questions in this video. First, let's look at the history of Heligoland. There are controversial texts from antiquity that tell of a Germanic people, the Griones, who lived on a marshy area of the ocean. In the 5th or 6th century, the Frisians colonized the island, which they ruled for several centuries. In the 12th to 14th centuries, Heligoland came under the rule of the Duchy of Schleswig. This was formerly a fiefdom of the Danish king, but due to tensions between the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation and Denmark, the latter had no control over the small island. In 1714, Heligoland was finally conquered and besieged by Danish troops, and from then on belonged to the Duchy of Schleswig under the Danish crown. In 1721, Heligoland took on its present form. This is because a New Year's tide split the original, larger island into 2 parts, and since then the dune has also existed as a neighbouring island. Heligoland remained under Danish control until 1807. However, when Napoleon Bonaparte put pressure on Denmark to join a continental blockade against Great Britain in order to weaken its influence in Europe, the British quickly conquered the strategically favourable island in order to continue to control trade in the North Sea. With the end of the Napoleonic Wars, Heligoland officially became British in 1814. But instead of becoming a flourishing colony, the island remained rather inconspicuous. It was not until the middle of the 19th century that the Germans became interested in Helgoland again. Since the British couldn't do much with the island anyway, an interesting offer was made in 1890. In the so-called Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty, the British exchanged the small North Sea island for the East African island of Zanzibar, coastal areas in East Africa, and a more favourable division of the zones of influence in Africa for the British. Heligoland thus became part of the German Empire, and Kaiser Wilhelm II immediately decided to develop it into a fortress and naval base, and defences, bunkers, and underground tunnels were built. During the First World War, the island was hardly used due to the extensive naval blockade against the German Reich, and had to be disarmed again after the end of the war. When the Second World War broke out, Germany saw Heligoland as the ideal location for an anti-aircraft position and a submarine base. The island is once again militarized. During the war, Heligoland is logically bombed several times. One date that the people of Heligoland will remember forever is 18th April 1945. Shortly before the end of the war, the British Air Force decided to carry out an incredible bombing raid on the island. Within 104 minutes, 1,000 British airplanes dropped around 7,000 bombs on the island to make it uninhabitable. The inhabitants managed to escape to air raid shelters in time and survived. Exactly 2 years later, the British decided to eliminate a symbol of German militarism and wanted to destroy all fortifications on the island in a single strike. This resulted in the largest non-nuclear demolition in history to date. In the process, 4,000 torpedo heads, almost 9,000 depth charges, and over 91,000 shells of various calibers, a total of 6,700 tons of explosives were stacked in the submarine bunker and in the labyrinth of tunnels at the southern tip of the rock and near the coastal batteries. The explosion produced a huge jet of fire and tons of rock shot into the sky. The mushroom cloud is said to have risen 9 kilometres into the air. However, it was not enough to completely destroy the island. On the 1st of March 1952, the British returned Heligoland to West Germany, and the inhabitants were allowed to return. Today, there are many reminders of this past on Heligoland. Visitors can see the remains of the bunkers and learn more about the history of this small island. The island is now a protected area and has specialised in tourism. That's all for today. Will Heligoland ever become a military base again? Let me know in the comments. If you want to learn more about a totalitarian regime in Central Asia, I can recommend my video about Turkmenistan. Have fun watching and see you next time. Ciao!